Welcome to my first Heart of Health interview, and I'm joined by Murray Ellender, CEO and co-founder of eConsult. Welcome, Murray.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Now, Murray, a lot of people watching this are trying to make things happen in healthcare, and you've built eConsult up with your team over 9 years, and you also continue your work with the Hurley Group for nearly 18, 19 years now?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Can I go back a little further though, and can you recall, when did you get first interested in the area of healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, well, right from a very young age, really. I took a year off after leaving school and decided I wanted to do medicine, and that was really the trigger, kind of having a year off and having some time to think. And then got into a medical school degree and just loved it. And then I was one of those people who loved every specialty as I went through it. So I did A&E, I wanted to be an A&E doctor. I did surgery, I wanted to be a surgeon. So I kind of really took to it and loved it. And then general practice is where I landed, which for me is the purest form of medicine. I'm biased, but you get 20 patients in a surgery coming in, all with different presentations. You've got to work out what's going on. That's really kind of pure medicine, diagnosing, understanding, empathizing. Brilliant.
And as a child, was that always what you wanted to be? Was it being a GP? Was it being a doctor?
No, not so much. I think I really enjoyed some of the Carry On films, and I wanted to be a ship's doctor when I was very little. But then I actually went off and did all the wrong A-levels. I did arts A-levels. I did history, English and maths A-level.
Really?
So I'm not a scientist by background. But actually I think that's the good thing about medicine nowadays. They don't, and we shouldn't limit it to if you're good at science, you should become a doctor, because medicine's much broader than that. You need that kind of, broad background. Interesting.
And do you find people wonder, where the heck do you get the time? Because you're a family man, you're a GP, a practicing GP, you're an entrepreneur with eConsult, and you're still involved with the Hurley Group.
Yes. I mean, the Hurley Group involvement is my clinical work. So, and I do spend most of my life running eConsult. That's the kind of main job. But for me, it's really important to maintain that connection to the clinical coalface. So, and so the Hurley Group is the way that I do that. I do clinical work through the Hurley. For me, that's really important, maintaining that. I'm speaking to GPs, other clinicians about what we do at eConsult. It really helps sitting on the other side of the fence and understanding the problems they're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, and what's it like, or what has it been like for you as a clinician moving into the world of technology and health tech?
Yeah, for me, I've always loved technology and been obsessed by it and the kind of constant improvements and evolution. And in some ways, we shouldn't kind of think of technology as like a thing that we need to add on to health. Technology is part of all our lives now. So naturally, it should be a part of healthcare. And I think the thing that drives me in this is that actually we don't embrace technology enough yet in healthcare, as we do in other bits of our lives. So for me, it's really important that we just do much, much more with technology in healthcare. Okay, thank you. And no doubt you've had to contend with many challenges during that transition, or just in general with regards to the eConsult business, frustrations, resistance in the business. Maybe things even look like they were falling apart at times. From a professional context, would you mind sharing any of those experiences? Yeah, sure. Listen, it's been, I think, trying to again, the technology really isn't the barrier here, it's the behaviour change that's the barrier. So in all spheres, when we've been trying to change how general practice is delivered, moving from a face-to-face interaction with a GP to a remote asynchronous interaction, that's difficult. And actually, well, we've now got not our system, but every GP practice in the land now has some kind of online system. And I'm super proud of the fact that actually but it's been incredibly challenging. That's why it's taken 10 years. The same now in an A&E setting, we're trying to digitise that journey in an A&E setting, but clearly there's resistance to that, and overcoming that resistance to change, I think, is the biggest barrier. Yeah. People kind of know they've got to change, but actually doing it is really difficult often. Yeah, so is there any if you look back on that time through that journey of eConsult and where you've got to now with the 100 or so team, the business that you're growing, the wins that you're achieving as you broaden out the business across the United Kingdom and beyond, what would you look back and see has been the really hard-won battle that you've had to deal with? I'm sure there's been a few. No, sure, but...
Is there one you'd call out?
Yes. There is. I think,
Tell us.
listen, the key one is having the NHS as a customer, because I think everyone thinks of the NHS as this big kind of, it's not one organisation, it's many, many organisations. And I was trained by the NHS, I love the NHS, but it is a difficult customer, because actually it doesn't, scaling and, you know, this is kind of well documented, but actually there are great pockets of good ideas that happen all over the NHS. The difficult bit is getting those to then scale. You know, getting the NHS to adopt good ideas across the board. That is the challenge. And to be fair, we've succeeded in general practice. We've got something that's scaled in general practice. I'm now trying to scale something in an A&E setting. You know, we're doing look, fabulous. You know, we'll have 20 sites live shortly. So it's getting there, but that's the biggest challenge, is trying to scale something. And the NHS knows it needs to do something, but getting it beyond that kind of pilot stage into scale, that's the real challenge. I mean, I relish it. I love it, but it's difficult.
When you went from the Hurley Group and that comfort of that into setting up eConsult, what was the defining moment that led to that decision?
So I think, I mean, it was, you know, and it wasn't my decision. We as a group of clinicians within the Hurley Group, you know, we were frustrated with the fact that actually for patients, it wasn't a brilliant journey. You know, that's what did it. The tipping point was the realization that we had a number of practices within inner city London, you know, but actually for patients, they wanted to see a GP. The journey wasn't great. They had to get on the phone at 8 o'clock in the morning. We'd make them wait in the phone queue. Then they'd have to come in and see us physically in a building, often 2 weeks later. We realised that wasn't a good journey, and that's what drove us. It was like, look, how can we make this experience better for patients, and how can we make this experience better for clinicians? So that was the kind of tipping point, and we really built eConsult for our own patients. That was the initial proposition. So then a long journey of scaling beyond that.
So, you know, the patient is that heart of health. So you embodied that 9 years ago. And effectively, you've been looking to change that status quo, the way that patient experiences that journey. What experiences have you had over the last 9 years that changed you or changed your mind on aspects of the way health is and tech? So you made that decision to look after patients, but what have you experienced that you'd like to share that changed you or your mind around health or health tech?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have learned so much on this journey, both initially as a clinician and now founding a tech business. I've learned lots, I continue to learn lots. And what I've learned the most is how important your team are, and kind of building a team, especially in a growing business, a team of leaders. You know, you've got to kind of build the next generation of people who are really kind of passionate about what you're doing. So that's been really important, that kind of, you know, how do you get people onto this journey with you and wanting to do the same thing, you know, getting them to come on the journey with you. That happens within the business, but actually you've also got to bring all your customers and the clinicians out there and the patients out there on the journey as well. So, and that is a lot to do with how you tell the story, how you build relationships. And the really interesting thing is a lot of the skills for that, I think I picked up as a GP. So, you know, that building a rapport with a patient in a very quick consultation actually gives you a lot of skills that are translatable into what I do running a technology business. Well, so it's quite circular but interesting, I think, kind of that.
That should be very reassuring for the clinicians out there watching this that want to get into health tech. Now, you mentioned elsewhere, I think it was the Evening Standard interview that you did around building insight around GPs, around the work, the medical insight, and I think there was a term you used about gathering a story. Could you extrapolate on that? Would you mind sharing a little bit about what that was?
The idea of gathering the story from the patient?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the key skill you learn as a clinician, but in any clinician, but particularly hone as a GP, is how do you gather the information you need from a patient as concisely as you can in order to decide what to do and how to treat them or advise them. And so that kind of effectively that's we call it gathering a history from the patient, but it's basically gathering the story from the patient. That's the key bit, and that's the bit that we've digitized. So what I haven't done is try and digitize the decision making beyond that.
Okay.
Now, I think that's for the future. I don't think, I think we shouldn't kind of dismiss that. But what we've done is we've really digitized that data gathering from the patient. How can we replicate what that brilliant clinician does in gathering the story from the patient? How can we replicate that journey in a digital fashion that brings value to the patient and brings value to the clinician?
Okay, that's super. Can I ask you now, over that time, and I noticed behind us we've got a lovely piece of art here that shows some of the journey and the wins that you've had.
How is this right?
But have there been times when, health is difficult out there? People are still queuing in A&Es. Yeah. People are still struggling to get to see the GP. But have there been times when you were suddenly struck at a much deeper level, when you realised the impact you and the team were having, or even the scale of the problem? Like, as you got deeper into this business, were there things that really got to you that you went, oh, I didn't realise that?
For sure. I mean, I think the thing that has happened over the last 10 years is that, the system, and this isn't just general practice, it isn't just A&E, is a lot busier. Where there's a lot more demand, there's a lot more complexity. And so actually, if anything, the problem is getting bigger every year that goes on. So actually the need for these sort of solutions is growing. Yeah. And so I think, yes, I think what really drives me and drives the whole team at eConsult is the fact that we are helping, every day we do tens of thousands of digital consultations and help patients connect to their practice, or help patients check in an emergency department and an urgent care centre. That's really rewarding to know that, sure, we're not, in no way are we fixing all the problems in the system, but we're contributing to making the system a bit more efficient and the journey better for patients. That's really rewarding, and that's what gets this team out of bed every day, for sure.
Okay, well, let me put it to you now that eConsult clearly have made ripples in the way people are experiencing healthcare in certain parts of the country, and you've had to overcome a number of challenges. Yeah. But for those who are starting out in the journey as health techs, what do you see as the biggest hindrance or the biggest hurdle for scaling from nothing to something? What would you describe as that?
So I think the biggest, and there's lots of brilliant ideas out there that will become businesses and flourish. The key thing to have is a test bed. You need somewhere to test these ideas and iterate them, because what might seem like a great idea at the beginning, you have to be able to pivot into something else. So, example, when we first started, we thought digital must be the solution here. There must be something here to help with technology. And we, like everyone who thinks digital interaction with a doctor, went down the video route initially. Right. But we soon found that actually a video consultation with a clinician doesn't really save anyone any time. It saves a bit of travel into the surgery, but you still need 10 minutes of a doctor and 10 minutes of a patient at the same time. So we kind of, we then went, and we were very fortunate because we had this test bed to test these ideas. That didn't work. Let's try something else. Let's gather the story from the patient up front, put it in front of the clinician. Okay. Oh, this seems to add value. But what we were very, so anyone who's starting out, I think, really, you need a place to test what you're doing, or whether that's an acute trust or a GP surgery or a pharmacy. You need, a clinical team with patients that you can work with to redesign the future. That's the key thing. So, wrapping up, would there be one piece of advice you'd give to a health tech out there, to somebody starting this journey, a clinician or a technical person? If you'd one strategy for them, what would you suggest on that? Be patient. So I think
I like that.
I think I think it's great to have ambition. You need ambition, but you also need patience in this game. And I mean patience with a CE on the end, because actually these things always take longer than you think they will. Yeah. And that's because actually you've got to bring the audience and the customer with you. And the NHS, as I said right at the beginning, it kind of knows it needs to change, but it takes longer than it should. So I think, hang in there. And if you will be knocked back. You'll be knocked back, but dust yourself off and carry on. Because if you're onto something good, keep at it. And in the end, you'll get there.
Well, thank you, Murray. And for the moment, thank you very much indeed. And I hope you all found that useful. And I look forward to having you over for our next Heart of Health. Thank you very much.